Okay, great, thank you. Okay. Hi everyone, finally, sorry about that, technical difficulties, but you know, I'm very new to this, so you'll have to forgive me. Hi, I'm Sharon, talking to you live from St Kilda for Local Link Tours. If you can see behind me, I'll just give you a little bit of a, I hope you can see this. Anyway, this is the famous Paul Kelly, and you, as you can see, from St Kilda. He has been immortalised on the walls of the Esplanade Hotel, which is where I'm going to start my tour today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and Local Link Tours. For those of you who read on Facebook, I was Dean Hampel's teacher many years ago, and Dean approached me and thought it would be a good idea to give me a job as a tour guide because he was so grateful I gave him A+, and I was the only teacher who ever did that. So that was my claim to fame for Dean. Two boys had started this fantastic tour company, 6 years already, doing really well, over 30 hosts who offer an amazing array of tours, and hopefully in the not too distant future we will be able to offer you some of these tours. But I'm going to give you one today about St Kilda and my own personal history here, because there is a personal history. But we will start with, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians of the land of Port Phillip, the Boon Wurrung people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So now follow me. I've got with me, so if I look like I'm talking to someone off camera, it's because I am. Okay, so we're walking along the walls of the beautiful Esplanade Hotel, which was built in 1877, and it was built as a seaside resort hotel, but it's been the home of live music in St Kilda for over 120 years. Kitchen, just above that kitchen actually is a balcony that offers the best sunset views possible. It's magnificent to come here, and I'll just turn around so you can see that behind me is the magnificent, you can't really see it that well, but St Kilda Beach. And to go up here, have a cocktail and see the sunset is really amazing. Anyway, so this was built in 1877 and was has been a live music venue for 120 years. So last century they concentrated on string instruments. In the 1920s, sorry, just excuse me for 1 second. No, page 3, thanks. Page 3. In the 1920s, there was jazz, big bands in the 40s, bop in the 50s, disco in the 70s, and lots of alternative music and very eclectic music today. St Kilda's always been a really interesting area in terms of, well, how can I say, people who live here have always been a little bit different, especially in the 70s and 80s, which is a period of time that I'm going to concentrate on because that was when my family had a business here. Now the Esplanade Hotel itself, is a really interesting place to come. There are bars and restaurants scattered throughout. There's a very cool room in there called the Gershwin Room, which in the old days was a kind of place where, you know, your feet would stick to the carpet because it was like so grungy, but it was wonderful. It still is today, and it's still used as a live music venue. They actually do filming of a rock and roll quiz show called Rock Quiz here, and it's terrific. The other thing that I love about the Esplanade, well, I love lots of things about the Esplanade, but there are some really cool things. So for example, there's a radio station in there, so they can interview people, and you can actually sit at booths, and there are 4 different channels to choose from. So you can do one about the history of the Esplanade, one is about the history of St Kilda. You can listen to live music or bands who have played here in the past. Now the other person who is very interesting about the Esplanade, or someone who lived here, is this person here, Alfred Belton. I don't know if you can see this, but Alfred Belton lived here from the 1890s till 1904 or something, and he was a philanthropist, a very wealthy man who owned an incredible art collection. And when he died, he left a bequest to the Victorian government, which was an amount of money plus his very extensive art collection. Now that bequest is still viable today, and that money has gone towards acquiring over $2 billion of artworks for the Victorian Art Centre. So, the Esplanade. This area is very important to me because when I was a child, you can't really see it. I mean, you can't see it because they pulled it down years ago. But over in the distance, back about, I don't know, 300 metres, was a place that I used to come to as a child, and that was St. Moritz ice skating rink. Now, as a primary school student and early teenager, that's what we did. We went ice skating. It was fun. It was something that was different. Our parents were not savvy with that kind of lifestyle, but we hung out there a lot and did lots of things. I've still got a scar on my leg, actually, which was because of that. Now, the other thing that was here, or things that were here, there were lots of nightclubs, Bojangles down by the water, and the show that was so popular in its day was the Les Girls show. And Les Girls were transgender women, transgender men, drag queens, etc. And it kind of gave the feeling that St Kilda was accepting of people who were different. Now, in the 70s and 80s, accommodation was quite cheap in St Kilda, and so lots of artists came to live here. The fact that there were, drag queens, etc., meant that the LGBTQI community was very much accepted, and very much so to this day as well. So we have a Pride March here along Fitzroy Street, which I'll show you soon. We have that every year, and they are about to open a Pride Centre, of which my child is an ambassador, but that's another story. You'll have to come and tour to hear my other stories. Anyway, so I'm just going to show you because there's a beautiful sunset coming, so let's just see if we can get some of that in the background. Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so Paul Kelly, 25 albums. Go back to the first page for a second. I just want to say a little bit about Paul Kelly. He's made 25 albums over the years, and there was a beautiful quote that I read that I wanted to say, how his lyrics capture the vastness of the culture and landscape of Australia. And I really believe that. So this whole area became a really cool live music scene. It still is. You can still hear music at the Esplanade and another place around the corner called the Prince of Wales Hotel, which we will pass soon. But in the past there were many places, the Ritz, the Crystal Ballroom, the George Hotel, etc. In fact, the Crystal Ballroom was where I saw one of my favourite bands, Hunters and Collectors. But it was also, the first gig there was Nick Cave and the Birthday Party. It was a place where lots of punks used to congregate. So we're making our way now to Fitzroy Street, St Kilda. Now I want to tell you a little bit about my family background because, I'm just going to stop right there. Because my family connection to St Kilda is very, I think it's interesting, and it's something that needs to be explained. So I'm a first generation Australian. My parents came from Europe after the Second World War. Both survived a horrible time. My father was in France and my mother was in Poland and then Siberia. And again, that's another story and something else I'll have to tell you later. If you're just tuning in, by the way, I'm Sharon from Local Tours, and I'm here to show you a little bit of a place and suburb that I love, which is St Kilda. Okay, so my parents, as I said, came from war-torn Europe, and coincidentally they both came on the same boat from Europe in 1947. They didn't know each other. My father was 15 and my mother was 12. The first place they lived when they came to Australia was Fitzroy Street. In fact, it was 32 Fitzroy Streets in Kilda, and 15 years later they bought a business at 33 Fitzroy Streets in Kilda. So I have a vested interest here. Okay. Now, I want to explain to you that up until the age of 11, we lived in a suburban, middle-class white suburb, East Bentley, and coming to St Kilda was a real culture shock. I'll give you an example of how middle-class and white actually Melbourne was at the time. When I was a baby, I came third in a baby contest. My brother always likes to say that there were only 3 babies in the contest, but that's, who knows. But the reason I'm telling you is because the category that I was placed in. And that category was for children whose parents were born outside of Australia. Now, these days, when I go into a classroom and ask kids, hands up if your parents are born outside of Australia, I'd say like 80%, 90% of the class would do that. But in my day, there were 1 or 2 of us. So I came from this suburban, white, middle-class area to St Kilda, which in those days was a den of iniquity. My parents bought the business in 1969 and had it till 1978. So very formative years for me. I was 11 years old and until I was 20. Let's keep going. Anyway, so once I was old enough to start working there, I came into contact with all sorts of people I'd never seen before, such as sex workers, substance abusers, transgender women, drag queens, and heaps of others. And we had a really interesting collection of customers that came into the store as well, into the shop. So we had a news agency. I'm just about to show you Fitzroy Street. I'll tell you about the news agency as we get closer to where it was. But I want to actually show you Fitzroy Street. It's a really unusual street. It's very wide. Very wide. I'm just going to turn around in a moment. Tree lined. But what's interesting about it is that the 2 sides of the road are so, I can't even think of the word, so diverse. Real dichotomy of places. So I'm just going to turn around so you can get an idea of what this street looks like. You can see that there's like a tram area in the front, tram line, and then we walk down the street. Now on the left hand side of the street there was very beautiful houses built, very wealthy, gorgeous mansions. And on the left-hand side of the street was sleazy and kind of like underworld type thing. And guess what side of the street our business was on? The sleazy side. And not only that, there was reason for that. Okay. So we had a news agency, gift store, record store, bookstore, etc. And also some very unsavoury magazines that were sold there under the counter. Excuse me for a sec. I remember one particular time. In those days, in the 1970s, there was censorship, and a book came out by a very famous American author called Philip Roth, and the book was called Portnoy's Complaint. And it was banned, but not before Penguin had published some of those books, and my father had gotten his hands on some. Anyway, a policeman who was a regular came into the shop and said, "You got Portnoy's Complaint?" My father said no, and the policeman said, "Damn it, I've been trying to get one everywhere." So Dad brought one from out the back and he was very happy. And then I remember reading it myself, staying at my grandparents while my parents were away, 12 years old. Found the book on a bookshelf, took it under the covers with a torch and read it. I was so happy. Anyway, so we're just about to approach the area where the shop was. I'll show you, just so you can see the other side of the road here, which is beautiful mansions, etc. Many of those became boarding houses in the 70s and 80s, and we'll talk about the Gatwick once we get a little bit closer to it. Now here is one of the restaurants. There's not a lot of fine dining on this street, but this is one that has remained for a long time, and it's called Distasio. It's very famous and very well liked. Beautiful Italian food. There's another Italian place that's even more interesting, which we will get to in a moment. So coming up to the shop, which was just here. All right, one more. This is a hotel, the Ridges. And, oh dear, look at it. It's abandoned. This was the shop. This was our news agency. Right behind me here. We used to get lots of celebrities who came in also. In fact, my father's favourite customer was a woman named Mary Hardy, and some of you may remember her. She was a variety show host. Her brother, Frank Hardy, wrote a very important Australian classic called Power Without Glory. And she was a regular customer, and my father would have done anything for her. She was wonderful. Anyway, so we had, the other people who used to come in, which was really interesting, were English comedians who would be performing at the Palais Theatre. They would stay at the Queen's Road Lodge, just down the road, and they'd drop into the shop to buy a newspaper or whatever, maybe one of those magazines, who knows. But people like Sydney James, Peter Cook, Dudley Moore, etc. So I would work here on Friday nights and Saturday mornings, and then we would always go for Saturday lunch to an institution here, which I'm just moving towards now, a place called Leo's Spaghetti Bar. It was first opened in 1956, a little bit further down the road than to where it is now, but it still remains to this day. And what is gorgeous is, when the owner passed away, his funeral procession went down Fitzroy Street, stopped at both locations. Now, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but the letters Leo are spelt out in the front there. No, I don't think you can see it so well. Anyway, it's a great place. You can get everything here, gelati, spaghetti, etc. We would come here every Saturday afternoon, and then we would go to the football. Now, I think it's really important here that I explain, well, a little bit about why my family got involved in the football. So I mentioned that my parents were survivors of the Second World War, Holocaust survivors, and they came to live in Australia, and they needed to assimilate. And one of the ways of assimilating into Australian society was to choose a football team. Now, my father originally lived in Carlton, so Carlton was the team of choice. And he instilled that love in me, even though I'm not a sports fanatic at all, not even a sports fan, but I do love my football, and I miss it. I'm sure we all do. Those of you who are just joining, I'm from Local Link Tours, and I'm taking you on a little tour of St Kilda. Now, at this point, I just wanted to say, times are tough, as you can imagine. We have 30 hosts that are struggling to find work because the tourism industry at the moment, as we know, is not great, but hopefully that will improve. However, if you're enjoying this, or you want to give us a little bit of a hand, which would be great, we would love it if you could donate anything. There will be a link that you can donate to, and that would be great if you could help us out. These boys have worked so hard in their business and really survived. Having said that, let me tell you just a little bit more about this business. Why do I love working for Local Link Tours? Because I get to be myself, as you can see. I get to tell people stories about myself, about my city. It's given me a love for Melbourne that I never even realised before, and I've learned so much about my city as well. And the thing I love about the tours is that they're tours for people who don't like to be tourists. So we will take you to places that you would never get to see ordinarily. And we can also customise tours for you. So a couple of the things interesting were, I've done a tour for someone who wanted to explore contemporary jewellery, or was interested in photography and architecture. The arts are my specialty, Jewish tours are my specialty, and all of our tour guides have their own specialty. We really, cater for whatever anyone wants. Some of the fun things that we've done, what I've done, has been, I had a family here from the States who watched an Australian program called Offspring, and they wanted to look at locations of Offspring, so we did that. And then I had a wife who wanted to surprise her husband for his 40th, so I took them to a fabulous restaurant in the city for breakfast, and then they did an archery course, and then they had a private street art experience. So I love that we can cater for whatever anybody wants to do. So please, when things are better or whenever you feel like it, jump on and book a tour with Locally. Thanks. All right, so I'm going to keep moving here. It's time. Anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit about one of the boarding houses that is across the road here called the Gatwick. Now, the Gatwick was infamous. In fact, it was notorious. It started life as a luxury hotel. I think we'll actually cross the road to have a look at it. So it started life as a luxury hotel, and then it was bought in the 1960s by a woman called Vittoria Carbone, and she changed it into a low-income housing project. Now, when she died, I don't know why her daughters didn't inherit it. The state government did, but the daughters bought it off the state government. They got a $2.5 million loan, and they bought it off the state government under the condition that they would keep it in the style that it had been. In other words, providing low-cost accommodation for people. Unfortunately, it was notorious because lots of awful things happened here. Violence, drugs, murder even. So here we go. That's the entrance to the Gatwick behind me. Now, it was eventually bought by a television station here in Melbourne called Channel 9, so that they could renovate it for a TV series called The Block. I've never watched the show, so I'm sorry to tell you that, but I do know that the idea is that you would take an area and you would, and they get people to come in and renovate, and then whoever sold it for the most money would win the show. But when the women sold this to Channel 9, it was under the proviso that Channel 9 found alternate accommodation for all the people that were going to be made homeless by this. I think it's a wonderful thing. Okay. So as we walk up the street, I told you before about the fact that there are drag queens here, and that there's the Pride Centre that they're building across the road there. That's going to be open, well, I don't know now, but they're talking about mid-2020, and I mentioned before that my child is going to be an ambassador there, so that's fantastic. So we're walking up here, and I want to show you this fabulous place here called the Talon Oh Hotel. I'm going to turn around and see if you can see the sign at the top there. Yeah. Sorry about this, I'm not so savvy with this stick, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So this is the Talon Oh. This was owned by George and Mirka Mora, who fled war-torn Paris, started the salon life in Collins Street, and then moved here to the Talon Oh. Now, Mirka Mora, George's wife, was a very famous and incredible artist who did the most beautiful mural. Can't see it from here though, can we? Such a shame. She was an incredible artist. In fact, she was artist in residence at my school, and because she didn't drive, I had the privilege of driving her into school every day and getting to know her a little bit. Can we see anything in there? No, it's too dark. Such a shame. Anyway, so Talon Oh's, George and Mirka Mora, had 3 sons. William Mora, who is a director or producer. Is it William? No, sorry. Philippe Mora is the director, producer of movies. William owns an art gallery in the city. And Tyrell is an actor who was in The Castle. Okay, we'll keep moving up here. So we're heading towards a couple of other places that are of interest. We've got the George Hotel coming up on the right, and the former train line, which is now the light rail, takes you into the city. You can see these beautiful mansions behind me. Most of them are now businesses, etc. So I'd like to take you to Dalgety Street, which is just up the road. It is a beautiful old street, but there is an incredible apartment block in there that I want to show you. So we're just going to walk over here now. Sorry about this. What? Isn't it red light? Sorry about that. Yeah, this is a good view of the Fitzroy Street, you can see. Okay, for those of you who've just tuned in, I'm Sharon from Localing Tours, and I'm doing a little bit of an expose about the St Kilda that I grew up with. Alright, we're approaching now. Yeah, I've done that. We are approaching Grey Street, and as you can see behind me, the light rail, etc., and the George Hotel. So when we get to Dalgety Street, we'll get to that apartment block. I'm going to invite a friend of mine who lives in it to come out and tell us a little bit about its history. Yes, actually, let's cross the road and I can show you that street art. Fabulous piece of street art here. I don't know who the artist is, unfortunately, but let's see if you can get, if I can get that in. There you go. Pretty cool. This is the George back lane. The George Hotel is also, I don't know what it is now actually. There was a cinema here, there were restaurants, there was a hidden bar back here. I'm not quite sure these days, but anyway, moving up to Dalgety Street. Seem to be quite a few people out these days, which is wonderful to see. Oh, and by the way, thank you for watching and giving me the opportunity to put some makeup on. It's been 6 weeks since I've touched my face, so it's been good. Yeah, I'm just going to show you some of these magnificent buildings behind me. So beautiful. Again, some examples of street art down this little laneway here. Okay. Alright. Nearly there. Is that what's that over there? Looks interesting. Something to do with the LGBTQI community, it looks like. Maybe it's a shelter, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, look at this beautiful building. Stunning. Okay, here we go. I'm sure most of you know the history of Melbourne. I'm sure you know that 1835 Melbourne was established. 1853 there was a gold rush, and because of that gold rush, Melbourne became one of the richest capital cities in the world, and because of that a lot of building was done. So some of these buildings remain to this day, mostly all our town halls. Which is coming up to this incredible block of apartment block here, which is really superb. Just excuse me for a minute while I let my friend know that we're here. Okay, sorry about this. She'll be out in a sec.
Sharon, hi.
come outside, please, Deb?
Was that? Oh, you now?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll come down.
Come say hi.
See you in a second.
Thanks. Okay, I'm just going to turn around so you can see what I've been looking at, what I'm talking about. It's an amazing block of apartments here. The whole street is magnificent. In the old days when I worked in my father's shop, we used to have paper accounts, you know, people who would get their letters, their mail delivered, and it was a really old-fashioned system. You had to sort through the files for each street, and so many of these streets are immortalised in my brain. I may never have been down them, but the names live on in my memory vividly. Okay. Here we go. She's. Hey, Deb. That's okay.
Or anything, I'm just, you know.
That's right. So this is Deborah Lace-Moore. Deborah's an actress, director, lecturer, teacher, an extraordinary person. What can I say?
Oh.
Deb,
Hi.
Can you tell us something about your magnificent apartment here?
Yes, these are Eden Mansions. It's a whole group of 8 towers. And I think they all.
Can you talk into the camera?
Oh, sorry. This is Eden Mansions, so a group of 8 towers. I think they each used to be individual towers for one family per tower, but now they're divided into 3. They were built in the Georgian period, in the Georgian style, I should say, in the early 1850s. And I have to say, I just love living here. It's a lovely community. We have also a big shared garden in the back. That's a communal garden, and garages that lead onto.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's still there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That lead onto Little Grey Street there. The style of them is very quirky, I should say. Beautiful,
just like St Kilda.
Just like St Kilda, and that's what I love about them. You know, our staircases are very steep and they're round. Our bedroom is actually upstairs. It's like an attic style, and we open the doors onto the deck, and we can actually see here in Melbourne. I can't believe it. The sea. We can see the sea. So we've got this sort of cityscape on one side and the sea on the other side, and in the morning and the evenings you can see the spirit of Tasmania making its way down to Tasmania. What else do you want to know about it?
Why did you move here?
Okay, so we were originally came from Sydney, but not so far away in Elston-Wicken, a sort of family home, I guess. And then our son grew up and everyone's gone, and we wanted a change of lifestyle, and we didn't actually know about St Kilda apart from sort of rumours that we'd heard. And I remember we were just looking in the paper one day. I think we'd been overseas, came back and went, oh, this was kind of interesting. And seriously came here and absolutely fell in love with it. Sort of came to the first floor, went, oh, this feels nice. And then went upstairs to the bedroom and went, I just have to have this place. And, it was the thing of moving into a different type of lifestyle from the family home, but also the sense of community. I really love it.
So that's what you like about living in St Kilda, the sense of community.
Absolutely, the sense of community.
Right.
I absolutely love it. And in these Eden Mansions in particular, there are a lot of artists, there are painters, performers, there's some writers next door, there's filmmakers next to us. So it's that sense of community, artist community.
I think that St Kilda's always had that sort of thing, hasn't it? That artists have flocked here.
Yes, yeah. Well, I heard that. I mean, coming from Sydney, I'd always heard that, and then when I came to Melbourne, I gathered they've been over to the other side of town. But I think there's a very beautiful community here, and in fact, there's an artist, a director friend of mine who I've worked with, who lives just down the road. There's actually quite a few people I've worked with, and in fact, how long was it? 3 years ago now, we did a show with his name's Adriano Cortese of Ranter's Theatre, and it was all about St Kilda and the different people in different houses, and the actual show started in 4 different houses, and it started in our house.
How did I miss that?
Yes, I don't know.
It must have been overseas.
Yeah, I know, because you come to everything.
Absolutely.
But it was beautiful. So I talked about the house, and I talked about my, sort of personal relationship to being there. He just moved in, so it actually must be like 2.5 years ago. And about, you know, it was all about St Kilda and living in St Kilda. And then we all sort of walked, once we finished in the house, we made our way down to the little garden there and eventually to Theatreworks, who had actually commissioned the piece.
I love Theatreworks.
I love it's fantastic. It was with this group of Korean artists as well. We worked with them in Korea, in South Korea, and we did the show in Korea. But there it was about kind of the concrete, the urban landscape. But here we had to totally change the show because St Kilda is so residential and so beautiful, and that's what it was about. It was really intrinsically about St Kilda and the wonderfulness of St Kilda, and it started in the houses.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Lovely. Well, thanks, dear. That was lovely to speak to you, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.
I'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye. Bye. I hope we were socially distancing then. Sometimes I kind of forget, but not really. Oh, how beautiful. Look at this place. And I don't know how much it comes through. What you see is a big screen. What I see is a tiny little screen. So it's very difficult for me to actually gauge how much we are getting in this background. So, Local Link Tours offers tours in many different areas. I concentrate mainly on Jewish tours, Mornington Peninsula, Yarra Valley and the city and surrounding suburbs, but we offer tours to lots of places including the Great Ocean Road, Phillip Island. We have Local Link guides in 3 different cities, in Melbourne, in Victoria, in South Australia and in Tasmania. So when we can travel within our own country, please feel free to contact us to do some of our tours. That'd be great if you did. As I said before, we have over 30 tour guides who speak all sorts of languages and can cover whatever your needs are. And don't forget, there's a donation button at the bottom, which would be great. Thanks. And I'm Sharon. Okay, we're going to head back towards St Kilda Beach. And I'll just tell you a little bit as we go towards there now. The St Kilda Beach is, I don't want to say notorious, but put it this way, they have to put an alcohol ban on every summer because it just gets a little bit wild on that beach. But the whole Esplanade in that area is used in all different wonderful ways. On Sundays there's an art and crafts market, the St Kilda Festival, where thousands and thousands of people come to listen to live music, etc. And hopefully that will still happen. There's a beautiful pier there with a wonderful cafe at the end of the pier. There's a man-made beach on the right-hand side, that man-made because sand eroded away, and so they had to ship in a whole lot of new sand and create a new beach. So we're just going to move back to Fitzroy Street. Wow, there's lots of people around, aren't there? I guess that's a good thing. Hopefully our restrictions will be lifted soon, or at least eased a little bit, and we will be able to get back to doing the things that we've been doing, which is what I miss the most. Okay, I'm just going to go up down here and we'll have a little look at the sunset, and I think then it's time to say goodbye. Oh wow, gee, look at that. Well, here's a brewery here. Whoops. I wonder if you can see inside. Looks pretty cool, but I don't know why it's open, because you can't actually go into a pub and have a drink. Or can you? No. Wow. Must just be open for takeaway. Yeah, it is. Okay, we're outside the George Hotel, which is an institution as well. And as I mentioned before, the Crystal Ballroom used to be here, the Ritz Hotel, various places of live music. It's all live music. So that brings me to the end of the tour. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I know it was a little bit rough at times. I am new to this, but you can see there's a magnificent sunset just about to happen behind me. Don't forget us at Local Link Tours. We would love to see you whenever. As I said before, we offer a range of different tours to suit everybody, and our industry has been hit pretty tough. So spare a thought for us, spare $1 for us if you can, that'll be great. And thanks for being with us, and see you on tour. Bye. trying to turn this off. I'm not quite sure how. How funny. Sorry. Bear with me, guys.